The NFL had its moment of collective disbelief, and it came wrapped in orange and brown. Nobody saw it coming this fast. Not the analysts, not the fans, not even some people inside the Cleveland Browns' own building. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just making a name for himself after his preseason debut against the Carolina Panthers. He was rewriting the rule book for how rookie quarterbacks are valued. And by the time the dust settled, he wasn't just holding a game ball. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. He was holding a $250 million contract, with a clause so innovative it had league executives scrambling to their lawyers. Let's rewind to the night it all began. The Browns weren't exactly setting the preseason world on fire in their first two outings. They'd been methodical, cautious, a little too predictable. Then came the Panthers game, with Sanders getting a nod for more reps than anyone expected. You could feel it in warm-ups. There was no hesitation in his dropbacks, no tentative footwork, no rookie mistake jitters. Just calm, controlled, calculated execution. From his very first series, Sanders had a different kind of command. He wasn't just running plays. He was orchestrating them. The Panthers came at him with disguised blitzes, tight man coverage, and some zone looks meant to confuse a young quarterback. He read them like a chess master, seeing the board 10 moves ahead. A 3-step drop here, a perfectly timed release there, and before you knew it, he was 7 of 7 on completions and marching the Browns downfield with a surge in precision. And it wasn't just the stats, though those were impressive enough. It was the way he looked out there. Cool in the pocket when it collapsed around him. Quick to release when the window was tight. Confident enough to check out of plays when he saw a defensive front he didn't like. That's veteran behavior, and it was coming from a guy in his very first NFL game action. The highlight of the night, and the one that will be replayed in slow motion for years, came late in the first half. 4th and 1 at the Panthers' 38. Most coaches would play it safe in preseason, run it up the gut, and move on. Sanders saw something different. He spotted the corner shading inside on Amari Cooper, faked the handoff, and lofted a perfect deep ball that dropped into Cooper's hands like it had been gift-wrapped. Touchdown! The sideline went wild. Even Panthers defenders were shaking their heads. By the time the final whistle blew, Sanders had put up numbers that looked like they belonged in a regular season highlight reel. 24 completions on 31 attempts, 3 touchdowns, and 0 turnovers. But the box score couldn't capture the bigger picture. This was a quarterback who made everyone on the field better. And that's when things got crazy. Within 48 hours, reports started leaking. Jimmy Haslam, never one to shy away from bold moves, had called an emergency meeting with the Browns front office. The topic wasn't whether Sanders had earned a roster spot. That was obvious. The topic was how to lock him up right now before the rest of the league started circling. What followed was one of the fastest, most aggressive negotiations in recent memory. Rookie contracts are usually locked in for their duration, but Haslam wasn't thinking in terms of usual. He saw marketability, leadership, and generational talent, and he wasn't going to wait 3 years to reward it. The result? A $250 million contract extension that not only shattered precedent for a rookie quarterback, but also came with a groundbreaking prime equity clause. Now, let's talk about that clause, because this is where Sanders really changed the game. Built into the deal was a provision giving him a stake in Browns-related media ventures, marketing projects, and certain merchandise sales. In short, Shedeur wasn't just a player anymore. He was a partner in the brand. That's a level of investment you almost never see, especially for someone still learning where to park at the stadium. For Haslam, it was a statement of the league and the fans. This isn't just our quarterback. This is the face of the Cleveland Browns for the next decade. For Sanders, it was a bet on himself. Not just to play well, but to become an icon. The backlash, of course, came fast. Critics called it reckless, saying the Browns were mortgaging their future on a player with less than a game's worth of NFL experience. Former players grumbled on social media about earning it first. But here's the thing. Shedeur had earned it, just not in the traditional way. He hadn't spent years as a backup, waiting for his shot. He'd walked into the league with poise, skill, and a readiness that made even the most skeptical veterans take notice. Teammates rallied behind him almost instantly. Amari Cooper called him a quarterback who knows how to win before the snap. Myles Garrett said, "He's got that presence. You can't teach that." And maybe the most telling endorsement came from offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt, who told reporters, "You can design an offense around this kid. You can build a team around this kid." The ripple effect was immediate. Across the NFL, front offices started revisiting their own philosophies. Could rookies be rewarded sooner if they proved themselves right away? Would teams be willing to integrate off-field marketability into contract negotiations? Shedeur Sanders had just forced those conversations. And let's not forget the haters. Because, they were loud. Talking heads on TV called it a PR stunt. Anonymous execs told insiders it was short-sighted. But every time someone tried to downplay the move, the replay of that Panthers game would run. And there was no talking around what everyone could see with their own eyes. Sanders had the arm, the decision-making, and the composure of someone who'd been in the league for years. For Sanders himself, the contract wasn't a finish line. It was a starting gun. The money didn't change the way he approached the game. He was still the first one in the building, still taking extra film sessions with the receivers, still staying after practice to work on timing. If anything, the deal just made him hungrier to prove that the Browns' faith wasn't misplaced. And that's where the real shift happened. This wasn't just about talent anymore. It was about belief. You could see it in the way the offensive line blocked for him, in the way the defense fed off his confidence, in the way the entire stadium seemed to hold its breath when he dropped back to throw. The story of Shedeur Sanders' $250 million contract isn't just a story of a rookie making history. It's the story of a player forcing an entire league to rethink its priorities. In the old NFL, rookies had to wait their turn, earn their stripes, and maybe cash in after Pro Bowl season or two. In the new NFL, if you can play, you can get paid. And if you can lead, you can become the cornerstone of a franchise overnight. For the Browns, the gamble is obvious. They've hitched their future to a young quarterback who hasn't yet taken a regular season snap. But for Shedeur Sanders, the gamble is even bigger. He's betting that he can take the weight of a historic contract, the glare of constant scrutiny and the pressure of an entire city, and turn into wins, not just headlines. And if his debut against the Panthers was any indication, he's already halfway there. The morning after the announcement, Cleveland was buzzing like it was a day after a playoff win. Local coffee shops had Shedeur's highlights playing on little mounted TVs, and sports talk radio wasn't taking a single non-Sanders call. Jerseys were selling out in the team stores so fast that they had to put up limit 2 per customer signs. But the real noise was coming from across the league. Inside front offices, this contract was setting off alarms. Here was a rookie, 5th-round draft pick, 1 preseason start, walking away with a deal that rivaled the biggest quarterback contracts in history. For GMs and owners who spend decades using a rigid pay scale to keep rookies in check, it was a nightmare scenario. You could practically hear the conference calls. How do we stop this from becoming a trend? What if agents start demanding equity deals for every rookie? Do we just ride it out and hope Sanders flops? The reality was, Sanders had put everyone in a corner. The old argument, rookies aren't proven, didn't apply when the kid had shown more poise, leadership, and precision in one game than some vets show in a season. The prime equity clause sparks panic. The most controversial part of the deal was still that prime equity clause. In plain English, it meant Shedeur wasn't just making salary and bonuses. He was now tied into revenue streams that typically stayed in the team's pocket. Media rights, branded apparel lines, digital content. If the Browns made money from using his likeness in certain ways, he got a cut. That's unheard of for an NFL player, much less a rookie. Traditionally, that kind of arrangement is reserved for ownership stakes or post-career endorsements. Sanders was getting it now. Rival owners saw it for what it was, a dangerous precedent. If Sanders succeeded, the next wave of young stars could demand similar deals, effectively shifting some financial control from franchises to players. That's not just a money issue. It's a power shift. Inside the locker room. In Cleveland's locker room, the mood was mixed, but not for long. Sure, a few veterans were initially skeptical. Big money for a rookie can sometimes create tension, especially if others are grinding for years without a big payday. But Sanders defused that fast. The day after the contract was signed, he walked into facility early with boxes of custom gear for the entire team. Practice gloves, headphones, cleats, even personalized film notebooks with each player's name embossed on the cover. It wasn't a PR stunt. It was his way of saying, I'm in this with you. By that afternoon, offensive linemen were laughing with him over lunch. Defensive backs were quizzing him about coverage reads. The respect barrier had been broken, the practice that changed everything. 2 days after signing, Sanders had his first full practice as the $250 million man. Normally, you'd expect a little tightness, a player pressing to live up to the hype. Instead, Sanders played freer than ever. The defense brought pressure in 11-on-11 drills, and he countered with quick reads, perfect audibles, and laser throws into tight windows. One particular play had everyone talking. Facing a disguise blitz, he checked into a screen for Nick Chubb, but delayed the throw just enough to bait the rushers in. The timing was flawless. Chubb took it 60 yards untouched. When they broke the huddle afterward, Myles Garrett smacked him on the helmet and said, "That's big time." The media storm. If you thought the buzz after the Panthers game was intense, the media circus after the contract was something else entirely. Every sports network had panel debates. Was Shedeur Sanders worth it? Was Cleveland out of their minds? Or were they geniuses for locking him up before he hit the open market years down the line? Rich Eisen called it the boldest move in modern NFL history. Stephen A. Smith called it a flex that tells the league Cleveland's tired of waiting. And Colin Cowherd went full analogies, comparing Sanders to a tech startup that goes public before it's even launched the app. But behind the hot takes, one truth kept surfacing. Nobody could remember a rookie quarterback who'd so quickly combined elite performance with undeniable market appeal. Sanders wasn't just winning plays. He was winning the narrative. Pressure on Deshaun Watson. Of course, the deal put a massive spotlight on Deshaun Watson. His job was technically safe, at least according to public statements. But privately, the leash was getting shorter. Every mistake he made was magnified. Every stalled drive was followed by a camera shot of Sanders on the sideline, helmet in hand, ready. Watson handled it professionally, at least outwardly. He told reporters he was here to help Shedeur be the best he can be. But everyone knew he could feel the rookie breathing down his neck. It wasn't malicious. It was inevitable. The brand machine starts rolling. Once the ink dried, the Browns wasted no time making Sanders the face of their brand. Billboards popped up across Ohio. Social media clips of his Panthers highlights got millions of views in days. A local clothing company partnered with him to release a limited edition primetime Cleveland hoodie that sold out in under an hour. Sanders leaned into it, but carefully. He didn't want to become the marketing guy at the expense of his on-field work. So he set a rule for himself. No brand appearances during practice weeks, no matter how big the offer. That discipline only boosted his credibility in the locker room. The first regular season test. Week 1 was the real litmus test. Sanders wasn't starting, but Stefanski had designed a package of plays for him to run in certain situations. Midway through the second quarter, with the Browns down by 6, they put him in for a red zone drive. First snap, a play-action bootleg, rolling right, hitting Njoku for 8 yards. Second snap, a read option keeper where he slid just before the linebacker could make contact. Third snap, a back shoulder fade to Cooper in the end zone for a touchdown. The stadium lost its mind. The sideline erupted. And on national broadcasts, analysts couldn't stop talking about his composure. That was the moment everyone realized this $250 million contract wasn't just hype. It was investment paying off in real time. Ripple effects across the league. By mid-season, other teams were feeling the Sanders effect. Agents for top college quarterbacks were openly talking about marketability clauses in future deals. Teams started scouting players not just for arm talent or mobility, but for their personal brand potential. It was no longer enough to be good. You had to be visible. And Shedeur was proving that visibility could translate directly to leverage. The Browns' gamble starts looking genius. The more Sanders played, whether in design packages or late-game situations. The more obvious it became that Cleveland had pulled off something extraordinary. They hadn't just drafted a promising quarterback. They'd secured a cultural asset. Every week, his jersey sales climbed. Every highlight made its way into national broadcasts. And every win the Browns picked up with him, contributing made the $250 million look less like a gamble and more like a bargain. By the end of his rookie year, Shedeur Sanders wasn't just the Browns' future. He was their present. And that $250 million, it was no longer a headline about risk. It was the opening chapter of a dynasty Cleveland was desperate to build. By mid-season, the Browns were in the thick of the playoff hunt. Deshaun Watson was still starting, but the cracks were showing. The offense stalled too often. Fans were restless. And every time the camera cut to Sanders on the sideline, you could feel the put-him-in energy humming through the stadium. Then came the Week 9 game against Pittsburgh. Watson started slow. 2 turnovers in the first quarter, a missed deep shot to Amari Cooper that had the home crowd groaning. Early in the second quarter, he took a hit that sent trainers jogging onto the field. It wasn't serious, but it was enough for Stefanski to tap Sanders' shoulder. The rookie jogged into the huddle like it was just another Wednesday practice. First play, quick out to Cooper for a first down. Second, a perfectly timed screen to Nick Chubb that went for 25 yards. Third, a deep shot down the right sideline to Donovan Peoples-Jones, threading it between 2 defenders. The drive ended with a touchdown to Njoku over the middle, tight window, linebacker draped on him. Sanders made it look like clockwork. From there, the entire flow of the game shifted. The Browns played looser, faster. Sanders didn't just move the ball. He gave them swagger. And when they walked away with a 27-20 win, the quarterback controversy wasn't just a whisper. It was a full-blown debate. The locker room vote without a vote. Stefanski didn't take an actual vote. But if he had, the locker room would have spoken clearly. Sanders had that intangible every great quarterback needs, the ability to make his teammates believe. Veterans weren't just talking about his throws. They were talking about how he handled the huddle. He didn't bark for attention. He owned it by staying calm, giving clear instructions, and reading defenses like he'd been in the league for years. Even defensive players started dropping hints in interviews. "He gives us juice," one linebacker said. "When he's out there, we know the offense is going to keep us fresh," said another. Those are the kinds of comments that tell you the locker room isn't split. It's already leaning. The media feeding frenzy. The national media smelled blood in the water. By Monday morning, every sports show in America had a segment on Sanders versus Watson. Pundits pulled up side-by-side stats, arguing over passer ratings and QBR, debating whether Cleveland's massive investment in Watson had already been overshadowed by their massive investment in Sanders. Some said it was too soon to hand the keys to the rookie. Others pointed out that too soon didn't seem to apply to Sanders. He was playing like he'd skipped the learning curve entirely. The Browns front office, meanwhile, stuck to the line. "We're evaluating every week," which, in NFL speak, means we're waiting for one more reason to make the change permanent, the official switch. That reason came in Week 11 against Baltimore. Watson started, but the Ravens' defense smothered him. By halftime, Cleveland was down 17-3. The offense had fewer than 70 total yards, and the crowd was chanting Sanders' name. Stefanski caved. The rookie came out after halftime and put on a clinic. Quick reads, decisive throws, extending plays with his legs when necessary. He led 2 touchdown drives in the third quarter alone, and while Cleveland ultimately fell just short, the comeback effort was enough. By Tuesday, Stefanski announced it. Shedeur Sanders would start the rest of the season. No more hedging, no more week to week. Owning the role, from the moment he was named the starter, Sanders carried himself differently. Not cocky, just assured. He spent more time with the offensive line, building trust. He held extra film sessions with his receivers, working on route timing. He even began giving short speeches before games, not rah yelling, but focused reminders about execution and mindset. That first official start as QB1 came against the Bengals. And if there were any doubts about whether he could handle a full game plan against a playoff caliber opponent, he erased them in 3 quarters. He went 26 for 32 through 2 touchdowns and managed the clock like a veteran closer. Cleveland won 31-17, and the post-game wasn't about stats. It was about presence. Analysts kept saying the same thing. He looks like he's been here before. The prime equity payoff. While Sanders was taking over on the field, his unique contract was paying off it. Every time the Browns posted a social clip of him breaking down a defense or celebrating with teammates, it blew up online, and every blow-up meant more revenue. Merchandise featuring his number 14 was moving so fast that the team store had to shift production priorities mid-season. Sanders wasn't just a player. He was a marketing engine. And because of that equity clause, he was benefiting directly. Other players noticed. Whispers started about agents wanting to do a Sanders deal for their clients. A few high-profile college quarterbacks even hinted in interviews that they'd be looking for equity when they turned pro. Playoff push. By December, the Browns were sitting at 9-5, squarely in the playoff picture. Sanders had gone 5-1 as a starter, and the lone loss was that close one to Baltimore. The kid was unflappable. In Week 16 against the Chiefs, a true measuring stick game, he went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes in one of the most thrilling matchups of the season. Sanders threw for 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks, keeping Cleveland in it until the final whistle. Even in a narrow loss, he proved he could hang with the league's elite. The playoff berth. Week 18 sealed it. The Browns needed a win to clinch a wild card spot, and Sanders delivered under the brightest lights yet. Against a desperate Steelers team, he put together a near-perfect game. 21 for 27, 3 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. When the clock hit 0, Cleveland had punched its ticket to the postseason, and Sanders had officially turned his $250 million contract from a gamble into one of the boldest success stories in NFL history. The postseason stage. Wild Card Weekend took Sanders from rising star to full-on phenomenon. On the road against Buffalo, in freezing conditions, he played with the same poise he'd shown all year. The Browns didn't win, but the rookie threw for 285 yards and 2 touchdowns, nearly leading a fourth-quarter comeback. In the handshake line after the game, Josh Allen told him, "You're going to be a problem for a long time." The legacy already forming. By the time the season ended, Sanders had rewritten the rookie quarterback script. He'd gone from preseason curiosity to playoff starter, from a late-round pick to one of the highest-paid players in the league. And he'd done it without the usual growing pains. The Browns had a new face of the franchise. The NFL had a new case study in how to handle young stars. And the business side of the sport had a brand-new blueprint. Talent plus marketability equals leverage from day one. And perhaps most importantly, Sanders had silenced every critic who said the deal was too much, too soon. Because if the Panthers game was a spark, the 2024 season was the wildfire.